Okie dokie. So you've seen a couple exceptions being thrown around, such as this one, arithmetic exception, and you've seen also array index out of bounds before. But let me just walk you through this hierarchy diagram because it's really important that you understand how everything fits together, and it will solidify your understanding of exceptions. So in Java, everything is an object, and we'll come back to this when we start learning about OOP, but everything is an object. Then from this object, we have throwable in here. And throwable is a superclass of all errors and exceptions. Have a look. Error and exception. So the difference between error and exception is that errors in here, these are things that we do not have control, such as out of memory. So for example, if your application is running and you've got a bug and the application is actually consuming lots of memory, then there is nothing that you can do about it. So this is out of your control. The same with linkage error. You've got virtual machine errors and a bunch of other errors which we really have no control. Then we have exceptions. So here, this is where we developers have control. And later you learn how to build custom exceptions. But right now, all of these are built-in exceptions. So we didn't have to write anything. Now, these exceptions here are further split. So have a look. So here you have exception, and then here you have IO exception. For example, if you're working with files, file not found, and you'll see these exceptions in a second. And then you have runtime exception. And there's a difference between these. So checked versus unchecked exceptions, and I'll cover this in a second. But from runtime exception, you can see that this as an extension of illegal argument exception, and then number format exception. Arithmetic exception is a subclass of a runtime exception, and index out of bounds is a subclass of runtime exception. And you'll learn about superclasses and subclasses in a second as well when we learn about OOP. So here, array index out of bounds is a subclass of index out of bounds. Now, if you follow these arrows in here, you can see that they will all lead up to throwable, which is a superclass of all types of exceptions and errors in Java, and throwable in itself is an object. And basically in Java, everything is an object. Let me actually show you this within the official API documentation. So in here, I'm within the official API documentation for Java. And what I want to do is in here, I want to search for throwable. So search for throwable. And this comes from java-lang.throwable. So this is the package and this is the class name. Now have a look. So it gives us the module, which is java.base, the package, java-lang, the class name throwable. And here, have a look. This extends object. So the same thing that I've showed you in that diagram. Then it gives us more information about, so the throwable class is a superclass of all errors and exceptions in the Java language. So this is exactly what I've just said. Then if I scroll down, you can see that it basically gives us more information about it, some of the constructors, methods, and you haven't learned about constructors, but you learn soon. But methods, so all of these are the methods. So I think you've seen print, stack trace, get message in here as well, so on and so forth. So this is the throwable class. Now, one thing to note here, have a look. Direct known subclasses, error and exception. So this is basically following the exact same diagram that I've showed you. Let's have a look at errors. So errors in here, let me just scroll up. Have a look. Class error, and it comes from object, throwable, and then error. And these are the direct subclasses. Annotation format error, assertion error, AWT error. One that I want to show you is virtual machine error. So if there is something wrong with the virtual machine, then you have no control. And it says An error is a subclass of throwable that indicates serious problems that a reasonable application should not try to catch. So this is what I'm trying to tell you. Most such errors are abnormal conditions. And then it goes further and explains more, and the same with constructors and methods. So these errors here you don't have to worry about because this is out of your control. If I go back, and within the throwable we have also exception. Now with exception, so I don't know why this is keep on coming down, but with exceptions, have a look. So this is again from object, throwable, exception, and direct known subclasses. Have a look, all of these exceptions. So this is quite a lot, to be honest, right? And probably you've seen one from here. So you've got, for example, SQL exception. You should have as well IO. I don't know why this is keep on coming here, but IO exception. So this is when working with files, and I'm going to show you this in a second. And you've got a bunch of other exceptions in here. So these are built-in exceptions. So also what I want to show you is, so if we look at the diagram, we have exception, and you've seen IO exception, and then we have runtime exception. And within the runtime exception, we have a bunch of other exceptions, such as illegal argument, arithmetic, which you've seen, array index out of bounds, number format exception. So all of these are part of runtime exception. Now there's a difference, which I'm going to explain in a second. But if I go back to the official documentation and then search for runtime exception, you can see that it's right here. If I click on it, you can see that this takes me to this page. Class runtime exception, from object, throwable exception, runtime. So this is just following that diagram that I've just showed you. And then direct known subclasses. So here probably you'll see some exceptions which are familiar. So have a look, arithmetic exception. So you've seen this one. Another one which might be familiar is index out of bound exception. So remember when we try to access an array on an index that doesn't exist, this is the exception which is thrown. Null pointer exception in here. So have a look, null pointer exception. So this is when you are trying to use a method from a null object. So this exception is then thrown. And then you've got illegal argument exception, illegal caller exception, so on and so forth. But you can see that there's a bunch of these exceptions. And to be honest, you don't need to remember all of them. So throughout this course, I'm going to show you and use a couple exceptions, and you'll see how it works. And then as we build our custom exceptions, then you have a sense of when to use which exception. If you have any questions, please do let me know. Otherwise, catch me on the next video.